Great. Welcome to the Madison Miller Podcast. The second guest of the evening covers horse racing for Horse Racing Nation and the Daily Gallop. We'll get to ponies in rapid fire. But here we're going to talk about the greatest Giants wins over the last 15 years. It is Jeffrey Byrnes. How are you doing on this Wednesday evening?
Doing good, Madison. Thank you for having me on.
Of course. All right, so I just told you that we had the Yankee guest on before. We did the Yankees. Now we're going to do the Giants. Do you want to start with the regular season wins or the postseason wins?
We can go regular season into postseason.
Okay, so the best 5 regular season Giants wins over the last 15 years. There's some good ones, but not many from recently, as we know, but a lot of them are obviously with Eli Manning, if not all of them. And obviously, those are the times that we enjoyed as Giants fans. So number 5 on this list. It was the year of Superstorm Sandy. I remember they started off great that year, and then it was a little bit of a slide. They got blown out by the Bengals in mid-November, and then they bounced back at home with a big win over Aaron Rodgers and the Packers. You remember when they blew them out on Sunday Night Football?
Yeah, it's a big one, especially after Sandy. The Giants definitely played inspired that night. Green Bay coming to town, but Eli Manning, I believe he had a few touchdowns in that game. Just definitely a big night for them.
Yeah, and I remember the first home game after Sandy. They lost at home against Pittsburgh. They had a big lead, or not a big lead, but they were up by like 10. I was at the Pittsburgh game after Sandy. And then Big Ben brought the Steelers back, and the Steelers won. There was a bunch of terrible towels in my life because that's how Steeler fans travel. Then the next week, they got blown out by the Bengals. People were killing the Giants, and obviously, and then 2 weeks later, after the bye, they come out and blow out the Packers. And that was one of my favorite regular season wins ever by the Giants. So I had to include that.
Yeah, it was. They dominated that game too. I mean, it wasn't even close, especially for a primetime Sunday night game. Giants came out, of course, after, like I said, yeah, they got blown out by the Bengals the week before, or 2 weeks before. I believe they had a bye week the week before that. But, yeah, they came out inspired. They put on a great show for the Giants fans, and certainly was a night to remember.
Yes, and number 4 on this list is also from the 2012 season. It was a few weeks before Sandy. Remember they blew out Colin Kaepernick, or was it Alex Smith, the quarterback in the 49ers, in the NFC Championship game rematch?
I believe it was still Alex Smith in the game that time. Yeah, I do remember that one. Yeah, they traveled to San Francisco, and they definitely blew them out. Particularly the second half of that game, they actually were much more dominant than the 49ers, and I believe only held them to less than 10 points in that game. Defense dominated all game, and though they were playing really well up to that point as well.
Yeah, and I think that was the game where Alex Smith got hurt and then Kaepernick came in and took over. I think it was that game. I vaguely remember that, but I have to go back and look. But also
could be right.
I could be right. I'm going to actually look it up. But in the meantime, a fun fact about that game, that was the day after Derek Jeter fractured his ankle.
Oh, man, yeah, that's...
I know. My head was not mentally...
I remember that moment with Derek Jeter. That was not fun to see. And, so that was definitely painful memories from 2012.
Yeah, like that was like my my memory of that game because I literally was so sad because of Jeter and I couldn't like get excited about the Giants because of Derek Jeter getting hurt. But yeah, Alex Smith played in the game.
Okay, yeah. So I believe that was one of his final games before Colin Kaepernick eventually came in. I don't know if it was that specific game where he was benched or got hurt and got benched, but was he benched or did he get hurt and Colin Kaepernick came in? I don't remember.
So we beat them 26-3. Then and then it looks like Alex Smith was still there the next couple of weeks. Week 10, he suffered a concussion in week 10, and then Kaepernick took over.
That's right.
Against the Rams.
I definitely remember, I think it was a little later on in the season where Kaepernick took over and they eventually went on their run to the Super Bowl.
Yes.
And pretty much Kaepernick took the job after that.
Exactly. It was a 24-24 tie in the game that Kaepernick took over, ironically enough.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, so that's a little bit of interesting facts. Number three is more of the recent games. I think the most fun regular season moment the Giants have had over the last probably 7 years, but this list dates back to over the last 15 years because obviously Super Bowl 42, among other things, is in the postseason list. But 2016 Week 14 against the Cowboys. That was a game. Remember, the Cowboys were riding high. They had the big win streak, and then Eli to Odell pretty much put the game away.
Yeah. I was actually at that game.
Wow.
That was a Sunday night game,
Yup.
prime time on NBC. Very cold evening, as a matter of fact. I think that might be the only time I've ever actually seen a Giants Cowboys game. And I've been to a
Interesting.
lot of Giants games over the last few years. I actually went on Sunday when they played the Bears.
Yes, I
But
did know that. I did
I
see that.
definitely remember. I definitely remember about that game. It was very top defensive play game. Giants had nothing going in the first half of the game. They were only down 7-0. The defense was really keeping them in the game. The third quarter, he said the long touchdown pass to Odell Beckham, which of course turned out to be the game winner. But the defense that night was just insanely good, and everything about that night was crazy atmosphere. And I believe I don't know if that was the game or it was the week after that where the Giants officially clinched the playoff spot. But overall, it was a great atmosphere. 10-7, so low scoring game, but just a very very eventful night.
Yes, and I believe it was 2 weeks later because the next week they didn't get blown out, but they lost in Pittsburgh against the Steelers. And then the week after that was when they clinched. I want to say they clinched in week 16. Yes, it was week 16
Uh,
because this was week 14.
yes,
Pittsburgh
you
was
are
week.
correct. You are correct.
Oh, wait, they lost to the Eagles in week 16, but they still clinched because somebody lost.
Yeah, I believe. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, they had to get help from the. I want to say it was the Saints. There's one of the teams in the NFC South. I believe it was the Saints who actually helped the Giants clinch the playoff spot that year. But that was actually the Giants went 11-5 that year in 2016, and certainly those were the good days of them winning. But haven't had much of that over the last 5 years.
Right. Yeah. So I had to include that one in there because that was a great moment with that touchdown from Eli to Odell. All right, number two on the list, 2011, Week 9 in New England, Super Bowl 42 rematch. Eli leads a game-winning drive in New England in Foxborough against Tom and the Pats.
Yeah, that was probably one of the best games of the entire season for any team. Just the overall atmosphere. I believe it was the first meeting between the Giants and Patriots since Super Bowl 42. If my memory is correct, but it was a very quiet first half, but then the second half, the offense just completely took over. Eli led it was the last second, it was a 2-minute drive or it was a late fourth quarter drive, and just him connecting with receivers in the end zone, just very well played game, particularly in the second half. And Eli Manning, when it came to the Patriots, I mean, and Tom Brady, he just let out at a completely different level and just played some of his best football of his career. And 2011, in my opinion, was one of Eli's best seasons. And it's amazing how I know the defense was great that year, but in particular, Eli really carried Giants offensively that year.
Yes,
Just so
Eli
many
was so
amazing
good that
plays,
year.
amazing games he played, and really one of the true reasons why they were Super Bowl champions again.
Yes. And number one on this list, same season, Week 14 against Dallas. JPP blocks the field goal, and the Giants hang on to beat Dallas.
Yeah, that was a crazy moment too for Jason Pierre-Paul. He was a rookie in 2011 when
Yup.
he first came to the Giants, and him and I said Eli was really carried the team offensively. Jason Pierre-Paul as a rookie, I mean, he had an incredible season. He had 16 and a half sacks for the Giants, and just carried that defense, and he just played outstanding football all season long. And when he blocked that kick against the Cowboys, and it really set the moment that, hey, maybe this team has got something here. Maybe we can carry this momentum as we march to the playoffs. And lo and behold, the Giants, of course, went on to win the Super Bowl, and just a remarkable game and a great moment for also really in the career of Jason Pierre-Paul as well.
Yes, and I'm looking at the 2011 season right now. I just never forget. They went toe to toe with Green Bay in week 13, the week prior to the Dallas game. They went toe to toe with Green Bay. Probably should have won that game. Eli carried them in that game. The defense stunk. I mean, who? What defenses aren't good against prime Aaron Rodgers? So, yeah, that's just a memorable game from that season too. And then the Dallas game was the next week, and then obviously Pierre Paul, the block, and then they came back from 12 down with in the fourth quarter to win that game.
Exactly, and don't forget also from that 2011 season. Don't forget was the Victor Cruz game against the New York Jets on Christmas Eve when he
Yup.
had the 99-yard touchdown catch from Eli,
I
and
thought about
that
that
was
game.
yeah, and that game was really the launching point for the Giants. They after that game when they beat the Jets, they did not lose a game the rest of the season. Week 16, 17, and then through the wild card divisional round, and of course the NFC Championship and Super Bowl. But it was really, and a lot of players on that Giants team credited that game and particularly that play for really as like the launching point of the Giants going on to the Super Bowl.
Yes, and the crazy thing is that they were 6-2 in that season, and they kind of fell apart after that Patriots game. They lose at home to Vince Young and the Eagles. They lose um at the Saints on Monday Night Football. They got blown out. The defense was terrible. And then it was that Packers game, obviously, which we just alluded to, which they should have won. And then the block field goal. And don't forget, between the Dallas game and the Jet game was a trap loss. They lost at home against the then Redskins. And then the Jet game, and then the Cowboys at home, and then the rest is history.
Yeah, so yeah, I remember after the Eagles game and or not the Eagles game, after the Patriots game, they went on that 4-game losing streak, and everybody was kind of getting worried. Like, hey, what's going on here? Why are we giving up so many points? Why isn't the offense doing enough? But obviously excluding the Packers game, but Tom Coughlin was on the hot seat during the 2011 season, but just much like the 2007 season, particularly after losing 4 in a row. I mean, it looks like, oh, is this team going to make the playoffs again? That's why the Pierre Paul block in the Dallas game, they really started turning things around, and it was that game against the Jets where things really, really started to roll, and of course the rest was history after that.
Yes, and I did forget about the loss at San Francisco in the losing streak too, and that was the game where San Francisco really took off too a little bit, as they a lot of people thought that 49er team was fluky, and then that win against the Giants for them was really like the hey, we're for real moment for the 49ers. So I just wanted to throw that out there. I forgot about that game as well. So want to get going to the postseason list?
Let's do it.
All right, number 5 on the list, 2007 NFC Divisional Round win at Dallas.
Yeah, that was a big game for the Giants, and particularly because the Dallas Cowboys, they went 13-3 that year with Tony Romo as the quarterback. I believe Wade Phillips was the head coach at Dallas because Bill Parcells retired the year before that. But the Giants went toe-to-toe with Dallas throughout the game. Defense, particularly in the second half of the game, was really, really good. Only held the Cowboys 3 points. And then it was the interception when his time expired by R.W. McQuarters, and really just set the Giants on their way. Of course, it was an upset victory with the Cowboys being that good that year. Tony Romo had an exceptional year as well, but not a lot of people picked the Giants to win that game, and they won that game, went on to the NFC Championship.
Yeah, and there are similar parallels to the number 4 pick on my list, and I think that the 2011 Packers were a better team than the 2007 Cowboys, primarily because Rodgers in 2011 much better than Romo in 2007. Romo was good in 2007, but Rodgers was the MVP in 2011. And obviously that divisional round game wherein the Giants knocked off Green Bay is my number 4 pick on this list.
Yeah, the Packers, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe the Packers went 15-1
They
in 2011.
did.
They only had one loss that regular season.
Yeah, they lost to the Chiefs in week 15, I think.
Yeah, they were the overwhelming favorites, and at least in the NFC, to get to the Super Bowl. And lo and behold, here comes Eli Manning and the Giants, and they not only did they beat the Packers, but they essentially just ran them over. I mean, they destroyed them that game. It was 37-20. I mean, defense played particularly very well. They had Aaron Rodgers all dazed and confused throughout the game. And it was really just everybody was just stunned over the way the Giants were just holding the Rodgers and the offense down, and particularly just how well the offense was playing too.
Yeah, and then obviously the Hail Mary to Knicks to close out the first half.
That's right. Yeah, there was the Hail Mary too. That Hail Mary in particular, I think, set the tone the rest of the game.
Yeah, that really. And then the irony is that how many years later? 5 years later, Rodgers throws a Hail Mary against the Giants in the wild card round with Buck and Aikman on the call too. Ironically enough.
Yeah, I remember that too. Yeah, that was after the. I think it was just a couple days after that boat trip to Miami.
That was the boat game.
Giants players took.
Yeah, I know that as the boat game too. But yeah, that's just kind of symmetry there between the Eli Hail Mary and the Rodgers Hail Mary. 5 years later, ironically against the Giants with Buck and Aikman calling that game too. Number 3 on this list. Speaking of Green Bay, another win at Lambeau, 2007 NFC Championship game where the Giants knocked off Brett Favre and the Packers.
Yeah, and that turned out to be Brett Favre's final game as a member of the Green Bay Packers, and that was one of the coldest games I think in NFL history. That game in Green Bay, I just remember the images of Tom Coughlin and his red cheeks, and it was just that was just had to be a brutal game to just not only just to play in, but to just sit there at Lambeau Field. It was a cold, windy night, and the Giants again went toe to toe. They played really well against the Packers and Brett Favre, and I just remember when the Lawrence Tynes missed the kick to send the Giants to the Super Bowl in the fourth quarter. We're thinking, oh my gosh, they're Packers get the ball, they're going to win this game, but then Brett Favre throws the interception at the Giants. I believe it's the Giants' 30-yard line. And when he made that kick, Lawrence Tynes in overtime to send him to the Super Bowl, it was the 11-year-old in me was just going absolutely insane. It was definitely one of the happiest days of my life up to that point.
Yeah, 11-year-old Madison was going nuts too. Right before my 12th birthday. My birthday was in between the NFC Championship game and the Super Bowl. My birthday's January 28th, and that Super Bowl was almost a week after my birthday.
Oh, wow. That's definitely a special birthday gift.
Yeah. And obviously the 2 Super Bowls are number 1 and number 2. I picked 42 to be my number 1, but let's talk about 46 first because that's number 2 on the list. The reason why, obviously, there's a difference between beating an 18-1 Patriots and a Patriot team that had were they 12-4 or 13-3 that year in 2011. Hello?
Yep, I'm here.
Yeah, so what do you remember the Patriots record that year? The year in 2011?
I believe I believe they went 13-3 that year. So I mean, it wasn't like they weren't too far off from. Obviously, they weren't as good as 2017, but 13-3 was no slouch either.
Yeah, so the 18-1 or 18-0 Patriots, obviously, that's why Super Bowl 42 is ahead of Super Bowl 46. But Super Bowl 46, obviously a great game. The Manningham catch. The irony of that game is that the Patriots came so close at the end, and with that Hail Mary, Gronkowski almost had it.
Gronkowski, I almost had a heart attack watching that play.
Me too.
I kid you not. Even all these years later, that game was actually on it was the NFL Network, and I actually watched that last play, and I still get nervous watching that Hail Mary throw.
Me too.
But he came within a couple fingertips of catching that, and I don't know, man, that would have been absolute. I don't even know how I would have reacted if he did catch that, but luckily he didn't. Became 2-time Super Bowl champions. I just remember that. Remember, Tom Brady had a safety in the first quarter of the game, almost at the very first minutes of the game.
Yes, I remember that the Patriots safety to begin the game. Yes, it was intentional grounding.
Yeah, because I believe the Giants came in on a blitz, and Brady had nobody to throw it to, so he threw it away. But he was in the end zone when it happened, and called intentional grounding, so that was the safety. But
yeah, that's crazy to think about. And then obviously number 1 is Super Bowl 42, the Tyree catch, and then obviously Eli to Burris for the win. And the difference between those two games were, quite frankly, the announcers. Because it was Buck and Aikman on 42 and Al and Chris on 46. And with 42, obviously, the two big plays. And obviously the Patriots being undefeated. So, obviously, that's number one. And ironically enough, I watched those two Super Bowls at the same place.
Oh, really?
Yup.
Yeah, Super Bowl 42, I mean, of course, many days that are still to come, but probably up until now, one of the maybe top three, maybe greatest days of my life. All things considered, especially when you're watching it with your family and just the overall atmosphere going in. Considering I can't remember how many people picked the Giants to win. Probably not very many. And, it's one of the biggest upsets in probably the history of sports, when you can look at the Patriots and going for the 19-0 undefeated season, and you remember when Manny threw the ball up for the helmet catch, it was they almost got to Eli, and they actually came extremely close to blowing that play dead. And if they did, I mean, obviously history is a lot different. The Patriots probably win the Super Bowl, and none of this would be happening. But luckily, Tyree was able to make the catch, and they were able to make a couple of extra plays. I remember that Steve Smith, the rookie, had a huge completion on third down for a gain of 11.
Yup.
And then the very next play was the Plaxico Burress touchdown catch. And I just remember when he caught that touchdown pass, my house, we had some guests over. The house just exploded. It was just pure joy, pure happiness. It was just surreal. And, just thinking about it all these years later is just it's an incredible memory I'll just never forget for the rest of my life.
Yeah, me too. Two of the best days of my life for sure. And the parties I was at, the places were going nuts for those two Super Bowls. The Tyree catch especially, and then the Manning to Burris. The whole place was screaming. There's people crying. I was crying after both Super Bowls. I was so happy. And yeah, two outstanding memories for us Giants fans, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Just hopefully we get those again in the near future. But it's always great to reminisce on to the good days, of the good old days.
Yes. All right. Speaking of the Giants, we'll kick off rapid fire with the current Giants team that sits at 3-1. You just saw them in person knock off the Bears. What are your thoughts on the Giants? And do you think that they ultimately fall apart, or do you think they end up in that 7-8 win range?
Well, so far, I mean, let's be real. First of all, they have no wide receivers.
Right.
I mean, that's to get that out of the way. I mean, their wide receiving room right now is so depleted. I mean, the fact that they're 3-1 right now with the wide receiving room they have is remarkable in of itself. But I mean, the offensive line, I think, is actually obviously excluding the Monday night game, but they've actually been playing really well. I mean, Saquon Barkley looks like his old self, and he has looked outstanding. I mean, I remember the 3rd and 16 play. It looked like he was going to get tackled for a loss and then cut to the other side of the field and got 25 extra yards. I mean, MetLife Stadium was going crazy after that play.
Oh, my God, I'm sure.
Yeah. But, yeah, he looks like his old self. Daniel Jones, all things considered, has actually been playing decently well.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, has been playing well to get a franchise tag and a second contract. That remains to be seen. But, I mean, the win against Tennessee in particular, when Brian Dable decided to go for 2 instead of going for the tie, I think that really set the tone for this season. Because, I mean, this is the first time head coach in his first game ever, and you're basically telling your guys, hey, I'm giving you guys the chance to win here. I believe in you guys. And so they went out and got it.
I had a feeling Dayball was going for 2 in that moment, too, weirdly enough.
Yeah, it was. And honestly, if they got down and scored against the Cowboys, I wouldn't have been surprised if they went for 2 again. Because,
yes,
why not? Go for it.
Yes, I was thinking the same thing. When they got the ball back against Dallas, I'm thinking if we somehow get a touchdown, I think he's going to go for 2. I was thinking that, too. It's so weird that you say that. And good point on the offensive line. And honestly, now looking back, the offensive line might have just been bad that day because of Micah Parsons and DeMarcus Lawrence, even though Lawrence missed a lot of the second half of that game.
He did, and also in particular, they were picking on Evan Neal, their rookie right tackle. I mean, I think Evan Neal's going to be fine. I think
I
he's going
think
to
so
be a good
too.
player in this league. It's just he had his welcome to the NFL moment essentially that Monday night. And I just think our left tackle Andrew Thomas has turned into arguably one of the best left tackles in all of football.
I
I mean,
love Andrew Thomas.
just seeing him on Sunday, I mean, he was dominating Robert Quinn, Roquan Smith. I mean, Andrew Thomas is the way he's playing right now. He's going to be a very rich man soon from this Giants front office, and it's actually I don't know. Everybody criticizes, rightfully so, Dave Gelman for the job he did with the Giants, but he did pick Andrew Thomas,
Yup.
number 4 overall, and a very rare Dave Gelman a good draft pick on his part.
Yes, his 2 best draft picks were Saquon and Andrew Thomas easily.
Absolutely, and hopefully Andrew Thomas keeps this up because he's definitely. Because I remember in 2020 that a lot of people were calling him a bust already. Even though he was just coming in as a rookie, and I give him a lot of credit. He has really turned his game around, and just the way he's just dominating. Like the first few weeks this season has just been really impressive to watch.
Yes, and he's the reason why I still believe that Evan Neal will turn it around, because I remember Andrew Thomas was just as bad as Evan Neal was against Dallas the other night, and then obviously Andrew Thomas turned it around. So I certainly believe that Evan Neal could have like a similar parallel to Andrew Thomas as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, Evan Neal had his welcome to the NFL kind of moment on Monday night. So I remember a couple years ago, Andrew Thomas had arguably the same thing. There was a Thursday night game against the Eagles back in 2020, and I remember Fletcher Cox just picked apart Andrew Thomas all night long, and it was just bad, like all the way around. Like, man, this is our left tackle's future. And then, lo and behold, after some work and some more maturity, here he is, and just one of the best left tackles in football, and really a rock on the offensive line.
Yes. All right. Next, rapid fire question. Breeders' Cup. Is there any horses that you think that will be in this race? And tell us about some of these ponies to keep an eye out for.
Well, the Breeders' Cup is just a few weeks away right now. We got a big weekend coming up for some prep races. Keeneland in particular, weekend, Friday and Saturday, you got prep races for the juvenile fillies, really just across the board. Also the Breeders' Cup Mile as well. In the Breeders' Futurity, a Grade 1 race for 2-year-olds, there's a horse I like here, and his name is Loggins, for trainer Brad Cox. This is a horse who was a near $500,000 purchase as a yearling, and he broke his maiden at Churchill Downs a few weeks ago, won by 8 lengths in a very fast time, got a really high buyer speed figure, and he's a colt who I think could have a very bright future in front of him. If he goes on and wins Futurity, he'll certainly be one of the favorites for the Breeders' Cup Juvenile in a few weeks. In terms of the Breeders' Cup Classic, there's a horse who is going to be coming over from California who's only going to be making his 6th career start, just his 3rd of the year. His name is Flightline. This horse, in the Pacific Classic, his last race, arguably was one of the most extraordinary performances that I think I've ever seen of any race from any horse. I mean, he took the lead going into the far turn. His acceleration was just a sight to behold. If you ever get a chance to look up the Pacific Classic from this year, please do it. It's just remarkable, his stride and just the way he turned back the field. He won the race by nearly 18 lengths, running a mile and a quarter under 2 minutes. It was just extraordinary. He's going to be the heavy favorite for the Breeders' Cup Classic in 4 weeks. His top competitor in the field most likely will be Epicenter, who you may remember was second in both the Kentucky Derby and Preakness this year. He came back this summer to win the Grade 1 Travers at Saratoga. He's, without question, the top 3-year-old in the division right now. So that's just a couple of names to keep an eye on. Plus, you got the First Lady at Keeneland, where Jack Brown has a couple of fillies who couldn't make noise in the filly and mare turf division. So overall, it should be a fun weekend coming up, and certainly a few weeks ahead.
Yes, I agree with you about that. All of it. I'm looking forward to the Breeders' Cup in a couple weeks as well. 2 more things. The Brooklyn Nets. I saw their preseason game on Monday night and a little bits and pieces against Philly. What are your expectations for the Nets this season, and where do you see them in the Eastern Conference?
Well, first off, hopefully everybody can stay healthy. That's the most important part, because KD missed a bunch of games last year. Kyrie, hopefully. I mean, I know the offseason drama was just crazy. I mean, KD demanding a trade, and then all of a sudden everybody makes up, and I guess everything's all good now. So, I mean, well, obviously they're here. I mean, they just need to stay healthy and just hopefully that Ben Simmons and everything is fine with him, because if he can stay healthy and he can, like, everything's all good with him, like he can be a difference maker for this team. He's a very good defender. He's a very good passer. I mean, he still has to work on his free throws. He still missed a couple in that game tonight. But overall, if he could just keep his control, if everybody could just stay happy and sound. I mean, I think this team could be probably around maybe a 4 or 5 seed in the East, but I think it's going to be another challenge for them to win a championship this year.
I agree with you. I think it's going to be 4 or 5 in the East. I just don't know where. I think that 4 or 5 is between you guys and the Cavs and the Raptors and even the Hawks a little bit and the Heat. I think the East is absolutely loaded. The previous guest, Julian, and then my guest the night before, James, they're talking about the Knicks a little bit and how we think it's going to be like the play-in tournament for them. But Brooklyn, I think, is probably in that like 4 or 5 range. And the highest I can see them is probably, if things go absolutely right, I can see them getting the 3 seed, especially if Kevin Durant is Kevin Durant and carries them on his back.
Yeah, absolutely. And remember too that Joe Harris is going to be back this year, so that obviously helps with the 3-point pointer. Seth Curry, I believe, it's still there, so he's going to be there too. So they're getting some pieces back that weren't there last year. Obviously, the big three of KD, Kyrie, and Ben Simmons, those guys just need to stay healthy on the court. And, I think they'll be okay for the regular season. It's just when they get to the postseason is where everything's going to be, worrisome to me.
Yeah, I agree with you there. And last one, this has been the last question I've been asking all my guests lately because everybody, coincidentally, that has been Yankee fans. How far do you see this team going in the postseason?
Well, my hope is, obviously, my great hope is they get to the World Series, but it's going to be difficult, obviously, for sure. My biggest concern with the Yankees is, this, obviously, their offense has been going really good, particularly in the last month, but they've been so hot and cold, in particular this season. We obviously saw that streak in August where it seemed like nobody was hitting at all, and everybody was just in slumps. Well, except for Aaron Judge, of course, but, I mean, so I'm worried about the offense. I hope they can stay hot, if they can stay cold, particularly with this layoff they're about to go on for the next few days for the ALDS. And obviously, probably my bigger concern about that is who's the closer for this team? Is it Clay Holmes still? Is it Jonathan Loáisiga? Scott Efros? I mean, right now I don't think this team has a closer. And so right now this bullpen in particular is it just worries me a little bit, and just particularly if you're gonna make it to the ALCS and go against this Houston Astros team, who I think is gonna be there as well. I mean, you're gonna have to go against Altuve, Kyle Tucker, and Alex Bregman, etc. So, this bullpen needs to be as sharp as they've been all season if they're gonna make it to the World Series, and that it does worry me a little bit.
Yes, I think the bullpen is the biggest concern as well, especially some of the injuries that they've dealt with of late. And one last thing before we go, where were you for the big moment yesterday when Judge hit 62?
I was actually in my room watching it on TV. Let out a big yell. I think everybody in the house heard me, so they obviously knew the moment happened. But yeah, it's a historic season by Aaron Judge. One of the who knows? I don't think we'll ever see a season like this again. Such an amazing moment. A great player. A legendary season, and hopefully he keeps us up for the postseason and lead us back to a championship.
Yeah, and I was literally same as me yesterday in my room, had the game on, had the volume up, just in case something happened. Something happened. I screamed. I was so excited. I was clapping. I think Michael Kay had a great call. I think John Sterling had a great call, and I was very, very happy.
John Sterling's call was epic. It was an amazing call by Sterling, and he's still got it all these years later, and he absolutely nailed it in the moment.
Yes, I think both of them did, but I love that Sterling mentioned Babe and Roger in there as well.
Yeah, definitely. Nice tribute to both Babe Ruth and Roger Maris.
Absolutely. All right, Jeff, it was a pleasure to have you on. We'll probably have you on in a couple of weeks to do some Breeders' Cup stuff.
All right, sounds good, Madison. Thank you for having me on.
Of course, have a good one.
I get to.